My names are Professor Henry Buisa. I teach project management and entrepreneurship at the Jomo Kenyatta University of Agriculture and Technology. Now, in the spirit of working from home, I wish to give this lecture to my students of project management and entrepreneurship. The topic today is the problem tree analysis technique. I am saying, whenever there is a problem, avoid addressing the symptoms. Look for the root causes of whatever problem that you are faced with, so that when you solve it, you uproot it with the roots. If you don't do that, the problem will recur. Look at that. Those are symptoms of malaria. That lady, look, fatigue, she feels fatigue. She feels pain. She has back pain. She has all those low gestation, body weight. So if you are going to look at those symptoms and address, for example, the back pain, you not remove malaria. Because these are symptoms of malaria. So even as we know those symptoms, we must identify that it's malaria, and to treat malaria, the symptoms will go. This is the idea. So what am I saying? Every observable problem has an immediate cause. That immediate cause has its own cause. And that cause has also a cause until we go to the root cause of the problem. All these intermediate causes are symptoms. And the problem has an effect. There's the immediate effect. That effect has also can lead to another effect if we do not solve that problem. It will lead to some ultimate effect. And therefore, we are now saying, in other words, I am saying problems have causes and effects. They have root causes and indeed ultimate effects. And therefore, we get the three causes and effects. There's no problem that doesn't have some root causes. So, I repeat, every problem that we observe is a symptom of some other problem. To solve it, it is best to analyze it, to discover its root causes or root cause, and address that root cause rather than limiting ourselves to symptoms. For example, students in Kenya in the past have been burning schools, burning dormitories. Yes, that was a problem. But that problem has its root causes. Just sending students away, asking parents to pay for the damage, and not addressing the root cause, the problem will recur. And if I'm not mistaken, it has been recurring. So, there is this technique, the why, the what technique, meaning when something happens, say, why did it happen? Then we go down, why did it happen? What caused it? So we start by asking, why is there this problem? The problem that we're observing. Then we ask again, what is the immediate cause? When you say, why is this a problem? You'll get hypothetical, a possible cause. Then that cause, you ask again, why is that a problem? We continue asking, what causes this problem? Until we eventually get to what is the root cause of the problem. If we can identify the root cause of the problem and solve that, then these others will solve themselves. Because the root cause is like a tree. You cut the roots deep down, the tree will die. But you just prune it, cutting it at the stem, and it will shoot again. Then, after we have done the root cause, we can now ask, what is the immediate effect of this problem? Should this problem persist? Should we fail to solve this problem, what will it lead to? It leads to an immediate effect. This immediate effect can lead to another effect and an ultimate effect. And therefore, we are saying this technique is called the problem tree analysis. Asking why. Problem tree analysis. So what I was saying, I'm saying problem tree analysis involves asking why the problem exists. This will help us to identify its immediate cause or causes. Then for each cause, ask again another why to identify its underlying cause or causes. You may continue until you feel you have exhausted possible causes. It is advisable to do it as a group. Yes, if it's not possible to get a group, do it individually like I'm going to do it, like I'm doing it, but you get better results working as a group. If you're an office somewhere, if you're on a project somewhere, have a workshop and do that problem tree analysis to come with it. So, when you feel you have exhausted the possible causes, I normally go up to 5 levels. Why, up to 5 levels, and I'm almost good. Then you ask, what would be the immediate effect if the problem persisted? If we don't do anything to this problem, what are the immediate effects? And what will this immediate effect lead to? What's the medium effect? And eventually, what will be the ultimate effect? And therefore we build a tree. That the causes are the roots. The trunk is the problem. And the branches are the effects. So, let's look at a hypothetical one. We have the core, already observed problem, and we have labels. We have our y's, y1, y2, y3. If you can go up to y5, you will be probably exhausted. And then we say, what will be the immediate effects of this core problem? Or what we shall observe problem, which is actually a symptom. What will be the short-term effects? What will be the long-term, and what will be the ultimate effect? So there we are. Once you ask why, you are likely to get various causes or one cause that leads to what we are observing as a problem. You ask again why, and you get other causes. You ask again why, and you get causes that lead to this one, that lead to this one. You want to get the root causes. Then you ask, what will be the immediate effect? This problem may lead to certain effects. Those effects will lead to other more serious effects. And on until you get what we call the ultimate effect. Now, this ultimate effect is the one that will assist you. If the more serious the ultimate effect is, the more probably urgent. So, what we have done therefore is we have done the cause and effect paradigm diagrammatically. We have the roots, the trunk, and the branches. Now, let's use an example. I'm using an example of frequent bus accidents. Yes, some time back, there was a bus company in Kenya that had frequent accidents. Because we are concerned with the root causes, let's just in passing, mention the possible effect. You see, frequent bus accidents, one, will lead to passengers get hurt, passengers are killed. There is also loss of confidence in the bus as an effect of frequent accidents. There is also late arrivals of passengers. These are like the immediate effects. These immediate effects will lead to some short-term effects. When we have many people killed and hurt, there will be many expensive court cases, insurances and all that. When there is loss of confidence in the bus, then there will be reduced bookings. And of course, late arrivals will also lead to loss of confidence in the bus. So we have expensive court cases, we have reduced bookings, and all this will erode the profits of the bus. And if the profits are eroded, the company can close. So the ultimate effect is closure, company closure. Nobody wants their companies to close. And therefore that makes it urgent. Let us look at the causes. Let us look at the root causes and address them. So, one possible cause is tired drivers. When drivers are tired, they cause accidents. And why are drivers tired? Because they are overworked. Probably they are going a trip, Mombasa, Nairobi, Mombasa, without rest. And why are they overworked? Because the company has a profit maximization motive. They want to make as many profits as possible, or as much profit as possible. And probably it's because the government's heavy taxation, which erodes their profits, and therefore to maximize those profits, they lead to fewer drivers, overworked. There is another route. The buses are unfit. And why are the buses unfit? One, old buses. The company just has invested in old buses, no new fleet. Or buses are badly maintained. Unmaintained buses and old buses lead to unfit buses and therefore can cause accidents. There is also buses are speeding. And why are they speeding? Because there are poor speed checks on the road. And why are there poor speed checks on the road? Because of corruption. If the police who handle the traffic are corrupt, then they overlook the speed limit. Same corruption, bad roads. When we have bad roads, accidents. Do we have bad roads? Because the roads were badly designed. And why they poorly designed and built? Corruption again. Tenderpreneurship. All these are possible causes. We could have gone deep and even gotten one root cause, but these are root causes. Now, these causes can be clustered. We can cluster them into their category similarities. You see, tired drivers, overworked drivers, these all point to the ethics of the company plus taxation in the country. So this could be one area of looking for solutions. So that is one cluster. Related causes can be handled in one way. We also have unfit buses. This is now a second cluster, a different cluster from this one. This looks like it's an internal management, bus management, internal policies, bus company policies. We have the third cluster, which is corruption related. So you can see, we may not have just one solution for all, but we can have different solutions. Some we can handle, some we may not handle. So, formation of clusters largely depends on the nature of the problem. There may be just one cluster, or there may be many clusters, and for each cluster, a solution can be innovated and generated. For example, in our bus accidents example, solutions could lie in the taxation and the driver recruitment front, or management, internal management front, the internal bus maintenance front, and even the corruption front. Now, traditionally, problem tree analysis applies to an existing problem. You observe a problem and you now want to see what caused it. That's traditional. But think about it. We can also make a decision today that may have future consequences, may lead to future problems. So I'm diverting away from the traditional of looking at existing problems and looking at an action taken today could lead to a future problem. In other words, a problem can be anticipated, hence analyzed in advance for solutions, or rather to avoid the problem itself. And that brings me to the current situation. Not in Kenya only, not in East Africa, not in Africa, it is global now. The corona pandemic has necessitated banning of crowding in virtually all places. Now there are rules on no crowding. Now to some people, governments have banned trading, they think so, has banned drinking or going to church or going to mosque, etc. But I'm saying no. The governments have banned crowding. So if you can continue with trading without crowding, you'll not be in any problem. And therefore, that is where entrepreneurship comes in. That's where project management comes in. That was innovation comes in. I'm saying this banning is likely to lead to short household supplies, and especially foodstuffs. Therefore, I want to address this problem using the problem tree analysis. So we have this action has been taken. Overcrowding has been banned. I am anticipating low supplies in homes. One reason is the inability for people to reach markets because of the banning of crowding will lead to low supplies. But I'm also thinking poor attitude towards unmanufactured local foodstuffs. Take Kenya. Quite some of us adore imported foodstuff, macaronis, rice from Japan, wherever, vegetable oils, and attitude towards local products. When this is coupled with that, and in a big rich market, it can also lead to low supplies. There is also poor preservation of perishable goods. We have our products, horticulture, tomatoes, kales. Poor preservation will also lead to low supplies. I'm also thinking that because of banning of crowding, lockdowns, factories are also leaving only essential workers or few workers, and therefore low domestic manufacturing. And when there's low domestic manufacturing, there will be low supply of locally manufactured goods. When there's low supply, it will lead to high retail prices. And that will lead to low supplies in the homes. There is also the aspect of imported goods. Again, because of crowds and reducing people even at the port, there will be inability to handle larger imports. When that happens, there is also low supply of imports. And when there's low supply again, leads to high prices. And this again leads to low supplies. I say problem 2 is best done brainstorming in a group. I am doing this as a lecture so that you, my students, and anybody watching this can go on and probably group up and do a better one than mine. But let me give you the principles, the techniques, and the guidelines. Look, when we have low supplies in our homes, starvation can arise. And when there's starvation, two things: crimes and vices, smuggling, like burglaries, killing to get food and all that. And therefore, we shall still have non-corona direct related deaths. So people can die of starvation. People can die if there are no supplies. Is it a 0-0 game? I don't know. But that's what I'm saying. That if we cannot find innovations to address overcrowding, the overcrowding ban, then we shall lead to low supplies. And it will lead to even other deaths that not mean necessarily the direct corona. So now, having done the problem tree, we now convert it into an objective tree to give or generate solutions to the problem. We have done our problem tree. We have identified the causes. But for what purpose? So that we now look for solutions to those causes. And those solutions, if you looked at the problem tree, it was negative. Objective tree will be positive. In other words, we want to describe the class as helpful. We want to be optimistic. Can we convert the problem into a solution? And hence, the objective tree. Let's go to our problem tree of the burning. We convert now, when there is insufficient supplies in homes, we want sufficient supplies in homes. When there was crowd bans, we want crowd handling innovations. So if we can come up with innovations that handle crowds, then we shall still have sufficient supplies in homes. So one, the ability to handle large imports. Can we come up with solutions? Can we make it possible to handle large imports even when the ban is on? If we can do that, then we shall have good supply of imports and then fair retail prices, and we shall have sufficient supplies. If we can come up with innovations of sufficient domestic manufacturing, even when there is a ban, then we shall have good supply of local manufactured goods, and that will again lead to fair prices, and we shall be home and dry. If we can get ways, the ability to reach markets, even when there is a ban on crowding, if we can innovate, then we shall have sufficient supplies in our homes. If we can convert people, make people have good attitude towards local and manufactured foods, then we believe with that. If we can have appropriate preservation of perishable foods, then we shall have fair supplies, sufficient supplies. And if that's the case, there will be adequacy. And if there is adequate, there will be peace and there will be normal life. So now our innovative skills come to this. These are the objectives. How can you achieve this? How can you achieve this? How can you achieve all those objectives? We have converted our problem tree in an objective tree, and now we are wanting, look at all those clusters, say, let's look for solutions. Look at it. We have crowd handling innovation. That is our focus now. We want to make people reach the markets even when there are bans on crowding. People should not go to markets in crowds, but people should have food in the houses so that we reach our ultimate goal. One solution is errand running crews, home delivery systems. These ones. In your village, in your estate, instead of all of you going to the supermarket to buy, those youths, probably the unemployed ones, 2 or 3, after all, they are known within the estate, they are known within the village, and the youth, come up, go door to door and say, you are going to that door as 1 or 2, there is no crowding, not be banned, saying, we can deliver for you. Give us your order. Take orders for 10 people. You are 1 or 2. You go to supermarket, no crowds. Buy and come and deliver. And who knows? Not that who knows. Envision that you will convert that into a future home delivery company. And therefore, what the corona has brought can become a booming business thereafter. So this is it. Innovations. There could be many. I'm only provoking you to invoke your project management, your entrepreneurship skills, and apply it now here. Look, we still want that, and we're saying we need good attitude towards local manufactured goods. Look, these are some of our local foods. Green vegetables with ugali, brown ugali, but quite some people have bad attitude towards it. So, why not use standard and social media campaigns, social media humorous disseminations to change the attitude of people? After all, some of these, like these orphaned food crops, they are more nutritious than the imported. Indeed, wheat and wheat bread, and then sorghum and sorghum bread, which has more gluten, which is more nutritious. Think about it. So, change attitude. Have our sufficient product. We're still going on. Our perishables. Can we have appropriate preservation of perishables? Tomatoes, green vegetables. The government could incentivize, give incentives to grow early maturing food crops, the cereals, the beans, the peas, cowpeas, and appropriate dehydration techniques. This is my own. The one you see here, I am dehydrating mangoes, I am dehydrating bananas, I'm dehydrating apples, I'm even dehydrating green vegetables. Indeed, even arrowroots. When I dehydrate them, I increase their shelf life. An arrowroot well dehydrated would stay for 8 months. All those greens, minimum 8 months. And therefore, when there's, like now there's a lot of rain in Western Kenya where I am, I'm in my rural house working from home. There's a lot of rain. We are planting those early maturing. Cowpeas takes 3 weeks. Plant cowpeas 3 weeks, dehydrate them. That same cowpeas will remain cowpeas as vegetables, but when in a dry form, you can also grind it to become flour. And that flour can even be used for porridge for our kids. Look, you are in urban areas. You can do urban farming. Fence, your fence Why not fence it with sacks of soil, and within the sacks of soil you plant? Call it vertical farming if you want. Backyard farming. There are people with big gardens in urban areas. Backyard farming. Roof. Chapana tool. They are planting, on your rooftops. Tire gardening. Hydroponics. Why should we depend only on rural farmers when we can also do it in your backyard and be self-sufficient, or face the corona-related shortages? We're talking of domestic. How can we have sufficient domestic manufacturing even when the grounds have been banned? I'm saying home-based manufacturing, cottage industrial approach. Look, just two people, they are already making bread that the factories make. There are many other things we can do. Cottage industry. Why don't we incentivize tax holidays, funds, crash program trainings, and have those domestic cottage home manufacturing to help sustain local manufacturing? Imports. Yes. Why don't we go automatic? Automation, mechanization of our ports. Does this corona therefore make us start planning? Because we have banned crowds at the ports. Well, long term, but something to think about. And therefore, my students, as you stay home, as you watch this video, the assignment is alone or in a group of not more than 3, no crowding, identify a critical current or future corona-related problem in your locality and do a problem tree to enable you offer an innovative solution. And I'm saying your solution will make your examination when you come back to university. That is what I'm going to mark as your examination. I am not going to give you any theory. What were the factors that led to corona? I don't want you to give me those answers to pass. How did people make up for the corona? Those theoretical questions, you are not going to get them from me. Bring me a verifiable, I will verify it, a project that you innovated to help solve the problem, and that is your examination. Theory, forget. Principles of management, forget. Project cycle management, what are the stages of project cycle management, forget. Come up with a project that has assisted this. And that is the assignment when you come back. Thank you.